All right, boys and girls, today we're going to talk about a fragrance from the house of Roja Dove. And this one's amazing. So good that SB has a bottle of it. But I ain't cracking that out for y'all today. I actually found one of my older samples of this that for some reason I never reviewed. But this is one you're going to want to probably put your nose on. Strap up. All right, welcome to the Scent Bubble. I am your host for the late evening. Today from the house of Roja Dove, we have Taif Aoud. And yeah, I was just in a hurry, guys. I would have cracked open the bottle, but I was digging through my samples. I haven't really... It's funny, I've got over 100, 200-ish bottles in my collection that I need to review and show you guys because you guys want to know what I've actually been loving enough to pick up a bottle for. But I have so many samples that I got to get through these things for you guys. So until then, I'm going to be draining samples, and I love my bottle too much to waste the juice for the review. We've got plenty in here, so we're going to get it in. Again, Taif Aoud, based on probably, the infamous Rose Oud combo. I will confirm that because it's been a while since I've put this fragrance on. But this is kind of known as, in my eyes and in my experience with this fragrance, one of the most wearable rose ouds. And when we think about the Taif rose, I don't want to sit here and name all the different roses that I've experienced. I've probably smelled at least like 6 or 7 different roses at this point in my fragrance journey, and they all have such different personalities. The most personality, though, in my opinion, that's kind of like your Justin Bieber of the roses, the most mass appealing one that nobody really has disputes with, is the Taif rose. And so to use rose and oud and to utilize the Taif rose to be the rose that you marry with oud is a good choice because most people love it. It's kind of the fancy schmancy darling of a rose that's very pretty and dainty and fresh. And so that's a smart move, counterbalancing oud, which is known for being funky. Roja's probably not going to do a funky oud unless he's diving into a fragrance you've never heard of. But I digress. Matter of fact, I just realized I didn't even type the fragrance in. Taif Aoud. I want to go over some general housekeeping real quick. Unisex fragrance for men and women. I do think rose and oud is all about balance in terms of whether it leans masculine or leans feminine or perfectly unisex. It's all about balance because oud by nature seems very masculine. Rose by nature seems very feminine. So you would think they meet right in the middle, but fragrances that have rose and oud often have a lean on one of the two, which drastically changes the mood and the feel of the fragrance in terms of gender being concerned. But this is a unisex fragrance. Ranking is a 4.35 out of 5. So it's a mass appeal score, but take that with a grain of salt because there's only 242 votes on Fragrantica, which is crazy considering we're in 2026. This fragrance has been out since 2023. But we know that a lot of the reason why a lot of the Roja Dove fragrances don't have a lot of votes is simply because the price points are insane. We're talking north of $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200 fragrances and everything in between. And a lot of people don't know where to shop to get really good prices on Roja. And even if you did, sometimes you're only going to find the more popular stuff or the Parfum Cologne series. And so it's harder to get some of these more off-beaten path Taif Aouds. But hopefully by the end of this episode, I'm going to show you the cheapest place to get it that I'm willing to reveal as public knowledge. Again, if you guys want more of the lowdown, join my Discord, and that is where I tell it all. But I will show you guys some good pricing for this that I've seen online that's accessible to just about everybody. Okay, classified as a floral, woody, musk, unisex fragrance, dropped in 2023, 4.35 rating out of 5, only 250 votes. Let's engage. So we're going to go test strip first. And it's interesting. Off the test strip, it's almost 50-50 between the rose and the oud, but the oud's sticking out just a little bit more. It is a similar oud path as Oud for Greatness from Initio. This one seems a little more, I don't want to say stank, a little more funk. And with the ouds, generally when I say funk, I don't mean, it's not a derogatory term. For me, funk means, in this case, it almost is as if there is a lake, there's a secret lake buried inside of a dark cave at night. And this cave is completely black. So you're out with your friends, you see this cave and you're like, you go in, no, you go in, no, you go in. And you go in long enough, you go in far enough to be blacked out to where you're scared. So you went a couple feet into that sucker, a couple yards or whatever. You look back, you could barely see your friends because it's pitch black, but you look into the cave and it is pure utter darkness. And you can kind of hear droplets of water, and you know there's water in there. And the smell of that air, it's going to be damp, this wet, damp, yet freshness because you're on the edge of the cave, so you're getting the wind blowing in, and it's this dark, fresh, damp depth. That's what the oud feels like here. So in one sense, it's fresh, and in another sense, it has funk, meaning there's other stuff into it that creates this kind of dark, mysterious allure while being counterbalanced by a very pretty, dainty, petally, airy, pretty Taif rose. But again, the oud presence on the, I really feel like this is a fragrance. It's going to change on everybody else's skin. So you have to put it on your skin, because I've heard people say things about it that I don't get in my own bottle wearing experience with this. But in terms of rose ouds, this has to go in the top 3 as the most wearable rose oud combo, because most rose ouds are heavyweight weighted fragrances. And this one sits more as a true middleweight. But this fragrance is truly most appreciated with some sort of a breeze, fall, winterish, but spring, summer nights with a breeze. I'm going to put this down because I'm going to tell you my experience on skin. It's almost got an incense note in the back. Yeah, I mean, it just, that cave analogy that I told you guys, it feels like you're in the cave laying in a bed of pink, airy, pretty roses. But because it's dark at night, it's soily, it's damp in the cave. There's a lake a hidden pool or lake in the back, but this little light breeze kind of blowing into the cave. There's that vibe. It's somewhat dark and mysterious, but pretty and fresh. But it has this weight behind it of dark, mysterious funk in the freshest way possible, counterbalanced by rose petals. Yeah, and I almost get an incense note in the back. Let's get off screen. I've been talking for 8 minutes and we haven't even transitioned. Aldehydic. That's the bounce I get on the agarwood oud, is an aldehydic freshness. So that makes total sense. It's been a while since I've seen the note combo here. Bergamot, middle notes, we have that Taif rose. And again, a smell just how it looks. You know what I mean? Cassis, jasmine, geranium, clove. The clove is back there, but it's way back there. It's not disruptive. The ylang-ylang, I do get a twang of ylang-ylang on that Taif, but sometimes it's playing with my mind. Is it the aldehydes? Is it the agarwood? Is it the ylang-ylang? Oh, there is incense. I get that in the back. Again, imagine that whole analogy I told you about the cave, but there's somebody deep in the cave with a lit incense, and you're like, wait a second, is that incense I smell way back there? Yeah, so for me, I get this aldehydic, Taif, rosish, slight touch of clove, ylang-ylang, tucked back there, heavy presence of oud on a 60-40, leaning on the oud compared to the rose. So this really feels like 40-30 in favor of 40 being the oud, 30 being in favor of the rose. And then with the 30% left of the fragrance is this damp, aldehydic, musky, incensey air with dampness with a slight twinge of clovey, ylang-ylang background if you really get close to it. I like it. I'm sure you guys would really struggle to find occasions for this, especially between the genders. Fragrances this reminds me of, can we get anything outside of Roja? Fortuna, Fortuna with Electimus, I'll smell that really soon, so I'll be able to confirm. Nothing else. Taif Elixir from Ormond Jane. Okay. Got some down votes. In a weird way, I do just want to mention this. In a very strange way, you know, I get these epiphanies sometimes with fragrances because I smell so many, it's hard for me not to connect certain ideas. In a very strange way, I feel like, give me a quick second on this review. I want to get up because I want to grab a fragrance and compare it because I think this is essential to help you guys out. I want to see if this is anything like Ombre Nomad. And I really shouldn't be putting on Ombre Nomad this late at night because it's nuclear. But apparently I go nose blind to this, I think, per my review. And I'm just curious with a tiny spray of it, what they feel like compared to each other. Because if I'm not mistaken, Ombre Nomad is a rose oud, correct? Yes, it is a smoky rose oud. So that's what's tying me in. They both have benzoin, geranium, incense, rose, and oud. So I knew I wasn't crazy. I want to let this dry down a little bit. I want to explain the difference between what this fragrance feels like in comparison to Ombre Nomad, because Ombre Nomad is a great reference point for what this fragrance could smell like, but I feel like Ombre Nomad felt a little bit different. Yeah. Yeah, so Ombre Nomad, the rose is different. It's such a different rose than the Taif. The Taif feels very petally, almost soil-like, green-like freshness. It's a very intimate but youthful flower. You don't get the youthfulness as much as you would just smelling Taif from Ormond Jane because of the oudy backbone gives it such a different maturity to the Taif, but it smells very particular. Whereas this rose is clearly different and it feels more floral. This fragrance feels more woody. And it feels more birchy. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, they are definitely different by about 30%, but it's the same concept reimagined. Ombre Nomad, they share the smoky essence of incense, but the incense is more prevalent in Nomad. Nomad feels way more woody, way more of a generic rose. Feels way more of a generic, just, you know, slight powdery, artificially slight sweetened pink rose with a lot of woods and smoke. And the rose almost has a very floral nature to it. I know that sounds like an oxymoron or whatever because a rose is floral, but it feels like it has a backbone of a different flower. There's saffron in it, but the saffron on my skin really dies away, and it's more of a floral, woody, layered with smoke. It's less funky, more mass appeal-y. This is really a connoisseur rose oud, but it's the most wearable connoisseur rose oud. So again, this isn't for most people, I feel. Now, let me go through some usual suspects. With this fragrance, I don't do more than 4 sprays. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And I try to always have a breeze. I typically like to wear it outdoors more because it's a challenging fragrance, but there's just, this fragrance calls my name in such an odd way that there's a gravity to it that I don't get in a lot of other fragrances. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Nomad because, props to them, the blend is superb, but in the niche category, it feels like they took cheaper ingredients but blended them to such perfection that you wouldn't even know they used the cheap ingredients because it still has the LV pretty lift to it. This feels aged, like the maceration time was 4 years on this rose oud. So it's definitely a more grandfather, not grandfather, that's a terrible description, SB. It's a more barrel aged fine wine experience to this that is only for a certain amount of people. Women, I think a woman, 95% of women wouldn't go near this. This is too, again, think of my analogy. A group of pretty dainty, fresh, airy, slight sweet, but more earthy, flowery, soily textured rose petals laying in a cave that you're standing on. You're in a cave, slight breeze coming into the cave, an incense deep in the background of a hidden lake in there, so it's damp. Like, women wouldn't even think that that would smell good. So this is for your very head scratchy, different, always been different type of artsy woman, a cultured woman who has always been extremely adventurous, not just going places. I mean adventurous like you're very food adventurous, you're very music adventurous, you're not in one lane. You're constantly bouncing around to other things as it relates to music, food, and adventure. So even if you're somebody who travels a lot, ladies, that doesn't necessarily mean you're cultured. It just means you're bougie. But I'm talking the cultural elements with it. If you're drawn to always learning about cultures and people and food and you have a palate to you, 5% of women, I could see women really digging this north of 30 with some ambitious 20-year-old women that are just different. For men, gosh, this as the more I try to describe this fragrance, the more I truly feel as though, an Ombre Nomad has 6,100 votes. So who the heck are we comparing the two when Roja has 242 votes on Fragrantica? That just goes to show you, but then that's also branding because LV is known for so many other things. More people know about the fragrances pivoting off of that, whereas Roja is known for perfume only and is a British brand, if I'm not mistaken. So as far as Americans are concerned, not only is it hard to discover, but then when you do discover it, the price is LV priced. So most of the market falls out of that. Whereas, I don't know. I'm theorizing out loud. Interestingly enough, Taif Aoud from Roja comes with a hair mist. You can get a hair mist version of Taif Aoud. And that's really interesting. I'm not going to include that in this review because I kind of get that vibe, but I don't think it's helpful to describe it that way because it's totally not a hair mist that I think a lot of women would wear. For men, though, I really feel like, where would I wear this? I think the beauty of this fragrance would come alive in cold weather. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a fragrance I think most people would not be drawn to any day of the week, any time of the year. But if you come across an airy, windy, rainy day or a windy, slightly chilled fall season day or a winter that isn't Arctic but cold, wind and air drastically improve the sensory experience of this fragrance. But because it requires that, I feel, outside of that, most men would purchase a fragrance like this who are snob niche collectors. And it will sit on your shelf as a kind of art piece that you crack out every once in a while, you wear in your house, or certain special occasions with a heavy breeze. It will be a beautiful signature scent, but it's harder to pull off. It's challenging. But SB, you said it's the most wearable rose oud. It is. Most rose ouds are very challenging. I mean, you look at a fragrance even like Oud Satin Mood. Yeah, it's a great fragrance, but most people that smell that are very overwhelmed by it, unless you're a collector and your nose has been trained to handle such an intense, brash fragrance. As smooth and silky and powdery and juicy and jammy and luxurious as Oud Satin Mood is, 90% of the people I've shown that fragrance to, they're repulsed by it. It's too much. If they smell it off in the distance, it's intoxicating. But if you're all up in the face of it, it's just for a connoisseur, man. It just is. Even for women, you know, you're not going to run into that fragrance until you're 50 to 100 bottles deep in your collection. And even then, you don't need 100 mil of it. Travel spray of Oud Satin Mood is perfectly suffice, and there's plenty of alternatives to it. Is there alternatives to this? Well, let's slow down a bit. Let me come back. I said only like 5% of women would actually go for this fragrance. For men, I think 5% of men would be into this fragrance, because as a man, there's only 2 real reasons you would wear this. Number 1, you are collecting fragrances as though they are art pieces. And as an art piece, this is different. This is distinct. It has depth and complexity. It'll allow you to scratch your head and appreciate perfumery. And it has Taif in it, which is kind of like a, oh man, they did Oud and Taif very beautifully, right? And it's a more palatable rose oud than many of them, less challenging in that regard. And it's a Roja. Outside of that, you would only really have appropriate wearing experience with this in a heavy, breezy, airy environment to really make it feel beautiful and not in a cave, funky, damp, and wet. Which is also why I feel, surprisingly, and I hit the 20-minute mark, so I promise I'm getting off camera soon. But this also makes me think of a fragrance like Royal Reflection from Day 3. Because I think when most people smell that fragrance, they don't understand it. Either for 2 reasons. One, because it's so simple of a fragrance, if you just smell it real quick and try to figure it out real quick. And 2, because it really is a purist rose fragrance with a ton of other fragrant backdrop character to it. It's one of those fragrances where first time you wear it, you'll go, women's fragrance, generic, but high quality, but who wants to just smell like rose, right? And then you come back to it months later. You have a little bit of juice left in it because it's probably not a fragrance you're going to blast and use the whole tube of in terms of all the other bangers Day 3 has. But then you come back to it and you go, oh my gosh, wait a second here. The passion fruit starts to come out of that fragrance. The other little petally facets, the earthy facets, the angelicness of it, the personality, it starts to just, it's almost like a nerdy kid that you saw 4 years later and they completely changed their life. They started working out. They learned how to dress. They got some perfume. They just look totally different. That's what Royal Reflection's like. But you wouldn't know it unless you gave it more than the first time and you actually sat with it and you were tuned out of your normal things that you require out of a fragrance. And then you really appreciate that as an art piece. And yet it's not going to be the most mass appeal fragrance from the house of Day 3. It's further down the line in terms of fragrances you would full bottle worthy grab, but it's such a respectable fragrance and it's so well done. That's what this is. This is something that only connoisseurs, I feel, could appreciate because it's more of an art piece, or people who live in colder weather. So they're in the perfect place at the perfect time to experience a wafting air behind this. Because what air does to a fragrance, wind does to a fragrance, is it provides a gust of freshness. And some fragrances are so dark or so subdued or so rich or so intense that a gust of air lifts up all the beautiful notes hiding in it that are hard for you to make out because it's overwhelming in a certain idea that is taking away from the sensory experience. Some fragrance require a freshness that doesn't just come with the fragrance. And so that's why most people won't understand this fragrance. But it's absolutely beautiful. This is a fragrance I would not recommend to many of you. You must put your nose on it to try it before you buy it. I own this fragrance. But the reason I own it is of the same reasons I explained someone would buy this, but it's also for other reasons. Because in my journey, there's certain fragrances that I don't understand yet, but they're intriguing and they invite me. And then I come across great prices for certain things, and it just makes sense to pull the trigger. My collection functions like a museum. And so focus on what I recommend to you guys in the top 10s and top 20s that we're going to start rolling out this year as stuff you should buy. But I can appreciate fragrances for other reasons than just wearing it every day or being perfect as a signature scent. I wear my fragrances sometimes as art statements that reflect parts of who I am and what I enjoy. Sometimes it's a very personal experience for me. And this is a very personal experience type of fragrance that I think only a certain amount of people could appreciate. So I can't just say, go get this, even though I got it in a heartbeat. You have to put your nose to it and see if you connect with it just like I did. And I would recommend get it with an atomizer on it and wear it more than once. Do 2 sprays around your chest so that it can be fragrant and you can get it. And wear it in cold weather. Wear it in breezy weather. Don't wear it in anything else. And wear it twice. One to get familiar with it. One to where it's less surprising and you can just sit in the moment and see if you connect with it. And if you do connect with it, it is an incredible creation out of Roja Dove. I think it's a 9 out of 10 for me. But for many of you, it will not be. This is the type of fragrance where if you put 100 people in a room, they will all have scores ranging from 0 to 10. With that being said, let's do one thing real quick before I wrap up. I want to go to Olfactory and see what it is going for because I think that's the cheapest place I've ever seen this fragrance priced. 100 mil, 300, 50 mil, 180. So you can get it low. 50 mil tester with cap. Yeah, so the lowest is like 180, but I swear I've seen this closer to the 150 price point. But I'll pay that price all day long, and I have paid that price for this fragrance, and I'm glad I did. But this is a connoisseur type of special wear. Again, get your nose on it, please. If you are intimidated by roses and ouds, this is definitely a lot more palatable than many rose ouds out in the niche category, but you need a breeze with this fragrance. I think without a breeze, only connoisseurs could appreciate it. In a breeze, it opens the floodgates for more people to really enjoy a gust of freshness under this that I think it rightfully needs, unless you're wearing it for winter. I think they packaged this fragrance to almost have an armor around it so that it can withstand fall and winter windiness and coldness. And only in those climates does it unlock and unleash a gust of freshness that it needs. Again, this was Roja Dove's Taif Aoud. Absolutely stunning fragrance, 9 out of 10 for me. Get your nose on it. Men and women, get your nose on it. See if you gravitate towards it. It's definitely very artistic. And I wish I could give you guys some alternatives, but I've been doing this review for so long, I can't think of any. Is there anything listed on Fragrantica as alternatives that I can recommend? No. There's a lot of off-beaten path weird stuff. There's an Electimus fragrance that's like it. When I get to it, I'll let you know if that's a valid alternative. But the Electimus is going to be at the same price as Olfactory is, roughly. So wait for the holidays, see if it drops down to that 135 to 150 price point. But try it before you buy it. Just please, for the love of God, respect this fragrance and give it time. Anyways, I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your week. Sound off in the comments. Have you worn Taif Aoud more than once? And if so, do you agree with any of my sentiment? Or do you completely get a different vibe or have different thoughts about it? And let me know if you are a collector or just an everyday Joe that doesn't have a ton of fragrances that has smelled it, because I think that context will help me see where your mind's at when you give that feedback. And of course, women. Are any of my ladies out there wearing fragrances like this? Please let me know in the comments section below. I imagine that women with a fragrance involving Taif Rose would lean more towards Ormond Jane's Taif, fragrances that are a little bit more pretty, a little bit more hairsprayish and dainty and airy and fresh and musky and things like that. But I want to see my artistic women out there and see if y'all are feeling this. Anyways, guys, hope you weren't completely annoyed by this 30-minute review. Hope you got value out of it. Again, in my reviews, I speak to many different types of people. So for many reasons, there's value that's popping into my head sometimes that I feel like I'm speaking to the connoisseurs. Now, right here, I'm speaking to the everyday generic person who doesn't understand this. And then to this, I'm speaking to the women. You know what I'm saying? My mind is constantly shuffling while I'm evaluating a fragrance. And anything of value, I try to lay it all on the table so that you don't have to go watch the other 5 videos that popped up when you searched for this fragrance. You know, I feel like that's where the fragrance game is now. You're searching for a review and people leave out so much information. You got to watch like 5 reviews of the same fragrance. Don't do that here. Just listen to what I'm telling you. Watch the review all the way through and you'll know if you should buy it or get your nose on it. With that being said, I love you guys. Stay blessed. And until next time, peace.